And in breaking news this morning, Downing Street has confirmed the Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet Office to conduct an inquiry into Conservative MP Nusrat Ghani's claim she was told that her Muslimness was a reason she was sacked as a minister.
We can talk to the chair of the House of Commons Standards Committee, Chris Bryant. Very good morning to you, Mr. Bryant. I mean, a lot of people watching will think there has been a collapse of standards in the Houses of Parliament, compounded by this latest allegation that a Conservative MP was sacked as a minister because of her faith. Now, finally, we've heard that an inquiry is going to be launched, but this happened 2 years ago. Did you know about this sacking, and was it ever referred to your Standards Committee?
Well, I knew Nuz had been sacked, obviously. I'm friendly with Nuz. We were on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee together. I have a lot of respect for her. And oddly enough, the moment she was appointed, I always used to tease her, have you been sacked yet? So I'm very friendly with her. I have to be a little bit careful about what I can say, just in case anything were ever to appear before my committee. But no, I'd never heard these specific allegations. What's extraordinary, you say that there's been a collapse of standards in Parliament. I think there's been a collapse of standards in Downing Street. I mean, the Prime Minister has known about this for a long, long time. He had an open conversation, as I understand it, with Nuz last summer, and yet it's only now that he's launching an investigation. And it does feel a bit like it's a rather desperate last-minute attempt to buy himself a little bit more time. And for me, the problem is that the Prime Minister has repeatedly now, for the last 18 months or so, consistently sort of undermined the standard system. You may recall back last November we had the vote on Owen Paterson. This was a Tory MP who'd been found by my committee to have on at least 14 occasions to have been peddling influence with government ministers on behalf of his paying clients. That's a complete no, that is corruption. And yet the Prime Minister decided that, oh no, he should move heaven and earth to try and protect Owen Paterson and keep him in place. And I think this is the problem, that Downing Street's kind of lost its moral bearings. Or it's lost its moorings. It's like a ship that has lost its moorings and is tossed around in every single storm nowadays. And I can't see how this particular Prime Minister is really going to be able to restore order.
Chris, we've also had the statement last week from your fellow committee chair, William Bragg, about blackmailing of MPs, people being coerced into voting a particular way, threatened they'd lose money from your constituency if you didn't vote the right way. Now, there's always been whips, strong-arming and cajoling and pushing people. But is this different?
There hasn't always been that, Ed. There's been a
Jack
real
Straw
difference.
talking about it in the 1970s with Walter Harrison. There's always been an element of this.
No, I completely disagree. Of course, yes, there's the whips are there to try and whip in, their members to make sure that they vote with the government. I fully understand that.
And whips have always had black books of potential things to use as ammunition.
I think that's a myth, actually. I think that exists on television dramas more than it does in reality.
They always told me they did.
Well, hang on, sorry, Chris Bryant, but you are talking with someone who was once in government. I mean, Ed Balls isn't talking as if he's just watched a television drama about how politics operates in the Houses of Parliament.
But I'm aware of that. I know Ed well, obviously.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making is, I think for the most part, whips do their job best when they are helpful and friendly, and it's only when they've completely lost the plot that they would resort to the kind of bribery and that we've heard of in the last few days. I mean, I've heard, in particular, one case, I've now been told by I don't know how many MPs about this case, of the Prime Minister himself saying to a Conservative MP that that he simply wouldn't be getting his bypass if he didn't back the Prime Minister. Now, I don't think I have ever in the past experienced, either for myself or for a colleague on my side of the House, a whip or a government minister saying you will or you will not get financial resources for your constituency because of how you vote in the House of Commons. You should always vote according to fear or favour, without fear or favour.
But isn't that the point, Chris? That it's one thing for the whips to say you won't get promoted, but for a former Chief Whip, Gavin Williamson, now the Education Secretary, to say, I won't give your constituents this money for your schools unless you vote a certain way, that is not something I've ever heard of before.
You know, that's the kind of distinction I was trying to make. I mean, I can even imagine whips saying, you know, oh, you must be waiting for your knighthood by now, or your damehood, or whatever. I can imagine them saying you can forget going on a trip with your select committee. All of those kind of things I understand, and you're damaging your chances of promotion if you don't vote with the Prime Minister, but there surely must be a line drawn, and MPs must call this out if they've experienced it.
So what should happen now, Chris?
Here I have to be slightly careful, because it's not inconceivable that people might make allegations that went to the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, and if she did a memorandum and found that a member of Parliament had breached the Code of Conduct, then that could come to my committee, and I will be sitting in a kind of quasi-judicial way. So I have to be careful, but it's not inconceivable that some of these cases might come to us. But to be honest, I think that this is misconduct in public office, and it's a difficult common law offence, but nonetheless that is a matter for the police. And I've been urging, several Tory MPs have raised these issues with me, I've been urging them to go and speak either to the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards or, probably more importantly, to speak to the police, because we have to put a stop to this. You cannot have government bribing members of Parliament with taxpayers' money. Funding should be allocated according to need, not according to anything else. And incidentally, I would say I don't like the levelling up fund that the government have introduced, because this is based on MPs begging ministers for money for specific projects in their constituency. And I think that, in the end, is itself corrupting. It's maybe not necessarily corrupt, but it is corrupting of the British political system.
Wow. Can I just...
Chris, we've...
Sorry. Chris, I just want to establish... You have somebody, an MP, who has told you, is this in confidence? I mean, unnamed, let's say, because obviously not in confidence because you're reporting it publicly. Yeah. But that the Prime Minister directly said to that constituency MP that they would not get funds for a bypass in their constituency if that MP voted against something in the Commons. Is that recent?
Back him.
Sorry.
I wasn't there. Several Conservative MPs have told me this story who were there. And they say that the Prime Minister said to a Conservative MP, "You will not be unless you back me, you will not be getting your bypass." I don't know the precise words. I wasn't there. But this often happens, doesn't it, with Boris Johnson? He pretends he knows nothing about it. He says, "Oh, it was the parties went on, but I had absolutely no idea. I just stumbled into an event and I thought it was a work event." All of that kind of stuff. And then you find out that actually, right from the very beginning, he was right in the midst of it. This is, I'm afraid, a bit of a well-worn path for the Prime Minister. And
this is, unless you back me now, is this in relation to the current crisis over his leadership?
I understand it.
Right.
As I understand it, but as I say, I issue a word of caution, which is that I wasn't there.
Well, we started the programme at 6 o'clock with an inquiry into parties by Sue Gray. By 7 o'clock, we had an inquiry into the Islamophobia allegations. Maybe before 9 o'clock, the Prime Minister will be launching a third inquiry into the practices of his whips and the kind of allegations that Chris is making today. Thank you very much indeed. Chris Bryant, the Common Standards Committee Chair.
Yeah, let's put all of that to the Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi.
We should. He's on 8:30.
Yeah, indeed. Good.